Hello, Metro Detroit golfers. Ben and Chad coming to you from the Golf Leadership Academy in Farmington Hills. This Tuesday tip of the week is something that's going to help a tremendous amount of you. So last week we had talked about the free swinging motion as a primary goal. We have to be able to do that and start to gain control of where the divot starts, or what we refer to golf world jargon as low point control. So can we control where the divot starts relative to the ball? So Ben, what's up with this low point control? Why is it important, and how is it going to help our friends out in Metro Detroit?
Yeah, if you can start to control where that divot starts, you're going to be able to start compressing the golf ball. And when you compress the golf ball, it flies real far. So we would say that this skill is pretty damn important. So a lot of you might be wondering at home, well, where does the divot start? So what we're always trying to coach is with your full swing with an iron, we're always trying to get that divot to start slightly in front of the ball. So the reason that's important is because if your divot actually starts behind the ball, or you're trying to lift that ball, there's going to be mud and grass in between the club face and the ball, so it never truly compresses up against the face. But if you can get that club to come down and interact with the golf ball first, and then take that divot afterwards, now the ball is going to be compressed against the face, and it's going to launch super far and look really cool.
So divot in front of the ball, or where that club interaction is with the ground relative to the ball, is, we would say, the number one most important priority, fundamental.
It's pretty important. Yeah, so now that being said, Chad, how does the ball get up in the air?
That's a good question. So having said that, the loft of the club is what's going to elevate the ball, not you or your intention to do it. So we're not trying to get under it. We're not trying to help it in the air. We're ultimately trying to go through it, and then the loft is what launches it up in the air.
You got it. So if you can all see at home, notice how that club face is angled backwards. Since the face is angled backwards, that's what's going to launch it way up in the air for all of you at home.
Very good. And like you said, compressing the ball, or putting pressure through the ball so the ball compresses itself against the face. It goes a lot farther and a lot straighter, and it sounds a lot cooler, feels way, way better. So having said that, a lot of you are focused on the swing. We would want to get the focus off your swinging motion and parts or pieces. We talked about that last week. And we just want to start to create some awareness around where is the club hitting the ground. So a lot of you, if you're experiencing distance loss and it's not going as far, a lot of you do have low point control challenges that we could definitely turn into opportunities here as you get some awareness around it and start to see that it works. So where would just start? So we have this tour striker here, or this tour board, and that's cool. So what's this all about?
Yeah. So this is going to give us some feedback on where that club is actually interacting with the ground. So if you don't have the striker board, no problem. One of the other things that you can use at home is a towel. So you just lay the towel on the ground, you measure one club head in front of the towel, and you go ahead and you start brushing the turf, and you're kind of starting to see where the interaction between the turf and the ball might be. So the first thing that I would do, Chad, is I'm going to swing the weight freely. So I'm going to have two 200 nails and start swinging this thing freely.
Two.
Yeah. And I'm going to start to see where the club interacts with the ground. So I'm actually going to strike the ground in different places on purpose. So I'm going to make mistakes on purpose just to kind of see what feels different, whether I'm striking the ground behind the ball or too far in front of the ball or in the appropriate place. So the first swing I'm going to make, I'm actually going to try to intentionally brush the grass behind the ball. Yes. Bam. Chunked it in the water. Awesome. Now I'm going to go way in front. Okay, now I'm going to go somewhere in between those two.
Okay, so for you at home, we have to understand the low point, or where the divot starts relative to the ball, is number one. Now, to get better at this skill, and actually start to manage it more, what we're going to ask you to do is what Ben just did, which is move it around. So please, 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 as we do these Tuesday tips, we're not asking you to be perfect. We're asking you to start training from a place of gaining understanding and understanding why the ball does what it does, so you can then help yourself when you're out on the weekend, and then on Sunday scorecard, you're posting your scorecard, the scores start getting better because you truly understand what causes the ball to do what it does. So Ben asked you to make some errors. As different or ironic as that sounds, we're going to ask you to do that, and you're going to be surprised at how you can make more skill gains and get better faster, rather than trying to do the same swing over and over again and expecting it to produce something different.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times that we encourage all of you to make errors on purpose is because a lot of times what you're trying to do and then the reality of what happens are two totally different things. So I can't tell you how many times I've worked with a player that maybe their divot's actually too far in front of the ball, and say, why don't you try to strike the ground behind the ball, and all of a sudden, poof, they just start flushing it. So now, is that good advice? Should we go out telling everybody that they need to hit the ground behind the ball? Well, no, but it happened to work for that player, right? And then there's other players where we'll say, try to brush the grass 12 inches in front of the ball. Guess what? Then all of a sudden they start interacting with the turf about a half inch in front of the ball, and they're shocked what happens. So everything's on the table when it comes to this experiment.
And each of you are different. So ultimately, we know that low point is the thing that's going to tell the ball to go far, and it's going to be cool. What you're going to have to do is explore it on your own, so you come up with your own personal answer for what helps you best. And then you'll be surprised at how you'll start to create some ways to adjust and adapt, and then troubleshoot when things stop working. So moving it around, very, very helpful. So after you move it around a little bit, where would you take our friends here?
So after I've moved it around a little bit, I kind of have a good idea of what I need to do to get the divot in the appropriate spot. Now I'm actually going to measure. So what we like to do is 10-ball sets, right? So I'm going to place a golf ball on the low point board, or in front of the low point board, I should say. And I would strike 10 balls to see how efficient I am at low point. So typically what we like to do at GLA is if you're 7 out of 10 in this activity, you're pretty damn efficient. So you're doing a great job. So the next thing I would do is I would start to measure.
Cool. So remember at home we said that put the club head or the ball a club head length in front of the towel. We have a board here. If you don't have a board or a towel, you could use tennis balls. So some scenario where you put a club head in front and see if you could just get the club head to interact in front of the tennis ball.
Tees on the outside will work as well if you're on a grass turf. But yeah, we use the striker.
So pretty much just make stuff up and see what you can do. And start to understand that you're trying to hit the ground in a relative spot next to the ball.
Clip the back of the board.
That's for one. 0 for 1. So having said that, as you go through this, you're going to start to find out it's not as easy as it seems. And that's okay. So golf is a skill game. We just want you to understand what 1 for 2, right? So you got that one.
That sounded good.
So we want you to understand and be very, very clear on what skill you're trying to develop. So in this case, our number one priority for your irons and wedges when the ball's on the ground is where you're hitting the ground relative to the ball. Some of the beginning players out there, a lot of you don't hit the ground and the ball doesn't elevate. And then people will tell you looked up. That's probably not true. Just you didn't hit the ground. So you're going to have to start to find ways to hit the ground. Swing lower. Work it out. So the earth is big.
Make sure you hit it.
Don't miss it. All right, so measuring and seeing how many out of 10 ultimately would give you an understanding of are you getting better, yes or no. Yeah?
You got it. And then let's say that, you do your measurement and you're 4 out of 10. So now what we're going to do next, so we're actually going to run some experiments to see how we can maybe influence this whole low point concept. All right, cool. So Chad, give me an experiment that I can run to help myself control that div.
Very good. So one thing that you can do is you can start to experiment with where you're putting your pressure or where is your weight. So you could be severely forward. You could put it severely back. Maybe severely forward, severely back. So start moving around and see how where you put your pressure influences where you hit the ground. Okay, so what'd you say you could do? Severely forward, severely back, moderately forward, moderately back, slightly.
You got it. You can just play around with that and just kind of see what happens, what's going to put the low point in the appropriate spot for you. So for me, when I do this activity, a lot of times if we're doing the pressure experiment, for me, it's about 70% on my lead side. I try to keep it there all the way through the swing. I get the divot in the appropriate spot. Now, there might be some of you out there like, well, wait a second, doesn't the weight actually need to move backwards? Well, it does, but that's not my intention. So once again, a big disconnect between intention versus reality. So just because I'm sensing pressure, staying forward on my lead leg all the way through the swing, that doesn't mean that's actually happening.
So you want to find out, does moving it around help you get more control over where the club's hitting the ground, and then what does that do to the ball? So it's very personal, it's very experiential. We're not talking swing theory here. We're just talking that club's got to hit the ground in the spot. And what you have to do on your own is start playing around with things to figure out what helps you control it best. Yeah?
Yeah, let's give them one other one. What about the spots on the ground activity? That's one of my favorites.
All right. So a lot of people think that the idea is you have to change your swing. You might not have to do that. You might just have to focus on a different spot on the ground relative to the ball. So in this case, Ben has put a tee down. You could put a tee or a penny or anything really, and then just try to hit that and allow the ball to get in the way and see what happens. So in this case, with the ball in the way, you're going to focus on the tee. Is that true?
You got it. I'm going to focus on the tee and see if that allows me to get my low point in the appropriate spot. Now, we always like to play out a little scenario, right? So Chad would be coaching me, and he would come up to me and say, "Hey, Ben, if you can get that tee out of the way on this shot, you will have an unlimited supply of two-hearted ale the rest of your life."
And a trip to the Masters.
Oh, yeah, and that's even better.
Right.
Yes.
With a private jet.
And then I would say, that's all I got to do.
Days en route.
I just got to hit that tee.
Yes. Has
So now-
nothing to do with the ball.
No.
Nothing to do with the ball does. Everything to do just can you go get the tee. So do you have the skill? Do you have the capacity to just make an adjustment and go get that tee?
There's two things I love in life. Well, besides my kids and my wife. It's 200 ales
And the best of.
Yes.
Okay, so in this case, just put a tee on the ground, penny on the ground, try to go get that thing for a trip to Augusta. Let's see what happens. All right, you did it. I don't have tickets to the Augusta, but I got it.
Hey, I'll take it.
All right, so low point is the #1 priority. We're going to come back to this more and more as we continue to do our Tuesday tips. You're going to have to start to experiment with some things. You could play around with where your weight is to start. You could play around with where you're looking or where you're trying to hit the ground. You'd be surprised at what you stumble upon. Pardon me. We're going to have you make some errors, experiment. We're not really assuming we have all the answers. We just know low point is the #1 fundamental, and that's what you have to go figure out at home. So we hope this low point video helps you this Tuesday. Play around with it this week. We thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Get off!